Tonight, you'll discover why thousands of people spent their entire lives inside magnificent medieval castles, yet rarely experienced comfort themselves. Behind every glittering feast, every noble celebration, and every mighty stone wall stood exhausted servants who worked from long before sunrise until long after darkness covered the kingdom. Some never enjoyed a warm meal. Others slept beside smoky kitchens or freezing hallways, and one simple mistake could change their lives forever. So, settle in as we quietly wander through the hidden world of medieval castle servants. Dim the lights, get comfortable, and let your breathing become slower with every passing moment. Tonight, we aren't following kings, queens, or fearless knights. Instead, we're stepping into the worn leather shoes of the ordinary people who kept enormous castles alive every single day. Their stories are often forgotten, yet without them, medieval castles simply could not function. As the crackling fireplaces fade into the distance and gentle winds move across ancient stone walls, allow yourself to drift back hundreds of years into a quieter world. Imagine, for just a moment, that you are standing outside the towering gates of a medieval castle. The first rays of dawn haven't yet touched the stone walls, and the sky is still painted in deep shades of blue. Most people inside the kingdom are asleep, wrapped beneath warm blankets. But not you. Your day has already begun. The cold morning air bites at your face as you hurry across the courtyard, your worn leather shoes slipping slightly on damp cobblestones. There is no gentle wake-up, no quiet breakfast, and certainly no slow start to the morning. A castle servant learns very quickly that the castle never waits for anyone. Long before the Lord opens his eyes, dozens of fires must already be burning. The kitchens need heat. The great hall must feel welcoming. Water has to be carried from the well before anyone else arrives. Every single task depends on someone like you. You pull a heavy wooden bucket from the icy well. The rope rubs against your hands, already rough from years of work. The bucket feels heavier with every step as you carry it through narrow passageways of cold gray stone. Before you've even caught your breath, someone is already asking for another. And then another. The castle is enormous, much larger than it appeared from the village below. Endless staircases climb toward towers where noble families sleep comfortably beneath thick blankets and colorful tapestries. Meanwhile, servants spend most of their day climbing those same stairs with buckets, firewood, baskets of food, or bundles of clean linen balanced on aching shoulders. There are no elevators, no carts for the narrow corridors. Everything is carried by hand. Every step reminds you how long the day will be. The kitchens soon come alive with the sound of crackling fires and clattering pots. Smoke drifts through the room, stinging your eyes before breakfast has even begun. The cooks are already shouting instructions. Bread must be baked, meat prepared, vegetables chopped, herbs gathered. Hundreds of meals may need to be served before sunset, depending on who happens to visit the castle that day. There is little room for mistakes. If bread burns, someone notices. If water spills, someone notices. If a noble guest has to wait even a few extra minutes for dinner, someone definitely notices. And somehow, that someone is almost never the Lord. It's the servant. Perhaps the hardest part isn't the work itself. It's how invisible the workers become. Noble families rarely stop to think about who swept the floors before they entered the room, or who spent hours polishing wooden tables until they reflected the candlelight. A perfectly prepared room simply appears, as though by magic. But there is no magic, only tired hands. As the morning continues, another servant quietly scatters fresh rushes across the great hall floor. These dried reeds mixed with fragrant herbs help soften the hard stone beneath everyone's feet. For a short while, they smell pleasant. Lavender, mint, sweet grasses, but beneath the fresh layer lies yesterday's dirt, and the days before that. Bits of food, muddy footprints, spilled ale, animal droppings carried in from the courtyard, and countless crumbs slowly disappear beneath the rushes until someone must remove everything and begin again. It isn't glamorous work, yet someone has to do it. Many castle servants begin this life while they're still children. At 12 or 13 years old, they leave their families behind and enter service, learning quickly that growing up inside a castle means growing up fast. Heavy buckets don't become lighter simply because your hands are small. The older servants rarely complain aloud, not because the work is easy, because complaining changes nothing. They simply keep moving, hour after hour, trip after trip, one fireplace after another. Sometimes visitors imagine castle life as a place filled with music, feasts, colorful banners, and grand celebrations. Those things certainly exist, but servants experience them differently. While musicians perform in the Great Hall, servants stand quietly along the walls, waiting for the next command. While nobles laugh together over roasted meats and fine wine, servants hurry back and forth carrying dishes too heavy for one person. By the time the feast is over, the guests remember the celebration. The servants remember the cleaning. Perhaps that is one of history's quietest truths. Magnificent castles weren't built only from stone. They were built upon countless ordinary people whose names were never written into history books. People who woke before sunrise. People who worked until the candles burned low. People who kept the fires alive, the kitchens warm, the horses fed, and the halls spotless, asking for very little in return except another chance to rest before the next morning arrived. And as the castle slowly fills with the warm glow of daylight, your own day has barely begun. Many long hours still lie ahead, stretching from one task to the next, until evening finally settles once again over the ancient stone walls. Imagine opening your eyes to complete darkness. Not the soft darkness of a quiet bedroom, but the deep, chilly darkness of a medieval castle before dawn. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster begins to crow, though you can barely hear it through the thick stone walls. A servant shakes your shoulder gently, whispering that it's time to get up. The day has already started. Whether you're ready or not, you pull on the same rough wool tunic you wore yesterday. It's still slightly damp from the previous day's work, and the fabric scratches against your skin. There is no warm bath waiting for you, no fresh change of clothes neatly folded nearby. Most servants own only a few simple garments, and they must last for years. The castle is silent for only a few precious moments. Soon, the peaceful quiet gives way to the familiar sounds of another busy day. Wooden doors creak open. Boots echo across stone corridors. Somewhere below, someone strikes flint against steel, trying to coax a fire back to life before breakfast. You hurry toward the kitchens, guided more by memory than by light. Candles are expensive, so they're used sparingly. The narrow hallways feel cold enough that you can see your breath drifting through the air. By the time you reach the kitchen, the room is already alive. Large iron pots hang above open flames. Bakers knead heavy dough with practiced hands, while cooks stir thick pots of pottage that will feed dozens of people before the morning is over. Smoke curls upward, though much of it never finds its way out of the building. Instead, it lingers beneath the ceiling, filling the room with the smell of burning wood and damp stone. Within minutes, you're carrying baskets of bread toward the great hall. The baskets are heavier than they look. Each step must be careful. Dropping fresh bread onto the dirty floor would mean starting all over again, and wasting food inside a medieval castle is not taken lightly. As the noble household slowly begins to wake, the pace becomes even faster. Fresh water is carried upstairs for washing. Fireplaces are fed with more logs. Bedchambers are tidied before their owners leave them. Windows are opened to let in cool morning air, even during colder months, helping clear away the lingering smell of smoke. No one gives you a list of tasks. You simply know what needs to be done. And if you don't know, someone quickly reminds you. The steward walks through the corridors with calm but watchful eyes, making certain every servant is doing exactly what is expected. A forgotten candle, an untidy table, or a dusty corner may seem like a small mistake today, but in a medieval castle, small mistakes have a way of becoming very noticeable. Before long, breakfast is served. The lord and his family gather in comfort while servants move quietly around the room, refilling cups, clearing plates, and bringing fresh dishes from the kitchens. You smell warm bread, roasted meat, and fragrant herbs. But very little of it is meant for you. Only after everyone else has finished eating do the servants gather for a quick meal of their own. There are no grand feasts waiting in the servants' quarters. Most mornings begin with coarse bread, perhaps a bowl of simple pottage, and if fortune smiles upon you, a small piece of cheese left over from the previous day. The meal is short, sometimes only a few minutes. There is no lingering conversation because work is already calling once again. Outside in the courtyard, blacksmiths strike glowing iron with heavy hammers. Stable boys brush horses that will soon carry knights across the countryside. Laundry workers haul enormous baskets of damp linen toward drying lines, hoping the weather stays clear. Gardeners gather fresh herbs before the midday sun grows too warm. Every corner of the castle depends on someone quietly doing their part. As the morning stretches toward noon, unexpected visitors arrive through the main gate. Their horses need water. Their rooms must be prepared. Extra food has to be cooked. Additional beds require fresh blankets. The carefully planned routine changes in an instant. No one complains. They simply work faster. Perhaps that's what surprises us most today. Life inside a castle wasn't carefully scheduled the way many modern jobs are. A servant never truly knew what the next hour might bring. A royal messenger, a traveling bishop, a hunting party returning early, or a sudden celebration could transform an ordinary day into one that lasted far into the night. And through it all, the servants kept moving, from kitchens to corridors, from staircases to storerooms, from the stables to the great hall. By the time the castle clock, if there was one, might have marked the middle of the day, your legs already felt heavy, your hands were sore, and your back ached from lifting, carrying, sweeping, and climbing. Yet somehow, half the day still remained. For a castle servant, the morning was never the hardest part. It was only the beginning. By the time the castle bell signals the middle of the day, your stomach has been reminding you for hours that breakfast was little more than a piece of coarse bread and a bowl of thin pottage. The wonderful aromas drifting through the kitchens have done nothing to satisfy your hunger. In fact, they only make it stronger. A servant quickly learns that preparing a feast and eating one are two very different experiences. As you carry another tray through the great hall, you catch a glimpse of the Lord's table. Freshly roasted venison glistens beside golden loaves of bread. Bowls of butter, creamy cheeses, sweet honey, roasted apples, and fragrant herbs decorate the long oak table. Brightly colored fruits, expensive spices brought from distant lands, and rich pastries fill the room with comforting scents. For just a moment, it looks like a celebration. Then someone calls your name, and the moment disappears. Those beautiful meals are not meant for the people carrying them. Only after the noble family and their honored guests have finished does the kitchen finally begin to quiet down. Wooden platters return with scraps still clinging to them. A heel of bread here, a few vegetables there, perhaps a slice of cold meat if the feast has been especially generous. The servants gather quietly in a corner of the kitchen. No elegant dining room, no musicians, no decorated table. Just a few tired faces sitting on wooden benches, grateful for a chance to rest their feet for a few precious minutes. Their meal is simple. Thick pottage made from oats, peas, onions, or barley fills worn wooden bowls. It isn't exciting, but it is warm, and after hours of hard labor, warmth can feel like a luxury all by itself. Some servants joke softly with one another as they eat. Others remain silent, too exhausted to speak. The laughter, when it comes, is gentle and brief, disappearing almost as quickly as it arrived. There is comfort in knowing everyone around the table understands exactly how you feel. No one asks when the work will end. Everyone already knows the answer. Soon enough, someone stands, brushes the crumbs from their clothing, and quietly says it's time to return. The afternoon has only begun. For many servants, the hardest part of castle life isn't the endless work. It's the distance from home. Perhaps your family lives only 15 or 20 miles away, but in the Middle Ages, that distance might as well be another country. Roads are rough, travel is slow, and days off are incredibly rare. Months may pass without seeing your parents, your brothers, your sisters, or the small village where you grew up. You wonder how much has changed. Has your younger brother grown taller? Has your mother harvested this year's wheat? Did your father finally repair the old cottage roof before winter arrived? You simply don't know. Letters are uncommon, especially for ordinary people who cannot read or write. News travels by travelers, merchants, or chance encounters, and sometimes no news arrives at all. The castle becomes your entire world. The people working beside you become something like family. The elderly cook who quietly slips you an extra piece of bread. The stable boy who always whistles while carrying hay. The laundress who somehow finds the strength to smile even after washing heavy linen from sunrise until dusk. Together, they share the same long days, the same aching muscles, and the same quiet understanding that tomorrow will likely look very much like today. Yet there is little time to dwell on such thoughts. A messenger rides through the gate, covered in dust from the road. The Lord has invited unexpected guests to remain for supper. Instantly, the peaceful rhythm of the afternoon changes. More bread must be baked, additional meat prepared, extra beds made ready upstairs, water heated, candles replaced. Firewood carried into every occupied room. The castle seems to wake all over again. You hurry back to the kitchens, your feet already sore from countless trips across uneven stone floors. The baskets somehow feel heavier than they did this morning, though perhaps it's simply your tired arms that have changed. Outside, the afternoon sun slowly begins its journey toward the horizon. Golden light spills across the castle courtyard, touching the towers with a warm glow that travelers might admire from a distance. It looks peaceful, beautiful even. But inside those walls, dozens of servants continue moving from room to room without pause, making sure every meal is prepared, every fire burns brightly, every horse is fed, and every guest believes the castle runs effortlessly. Perhaps that is the greatest illusion of medieval life. A magnificent castle appeared calm and graceful from the outside. Yet behind every polished table, every glowing fireplace, and every grand banquet stood ordinary people whose endless work was almost never noticed. And as the afternoon quietly slips toward evening, you realize something else. The day is far from over. The longest hours are still waiting ahead. As the afternoon slowly fades into evening, the castle becomes busier rather than quieter. Fires are fed with fresh logs, candles are lit one by one, and the great hall begins preparing for the evening meal. For the nobles, this is often the most pleasant part of the day. For the servants, it can be the most demanding. Centuries later, many people imagine castle life as a world filled with endless feasts, brave knights, and cheerful music. But hidden beneath that grand picture were countless unusual customs and forgotten jobs that sound almost unbelievable today. Take the castle's candle keeper, for example. In a world without electricity, light was precious. Every evening, hundreds of candles and oil lamps had to be lit before darkness settled over the castle. A servant carefully walked through endless corridors carrying a small flame, stopping at each candle one after another. If even a single hallway remained dark, someone might stumble on the uneven stone floors, or an important guest might complain that the castle seemed poorly managed. It was a quiet job, but one that demanded constant attention. Another servant spent much of the day watching the fireplaces. That may sound relaxing, but it was anything but. A roaring fire kept the castle warm during long winters, yet it could also become incredibly dangerous. A single spark landing on dry straw or wooden furniture might start a fire capable of destroying an entire section of the castle. So someone was always nearby, adding logs, clearing ashes, and making sure the flames stayed under control. Then there were the falconers. These highly skilled servants cared for the lord's hunting birds, some of the most valuable animals in the castle. Falcons were symbols of wealth and power. They required careful feeding, patient training, and constant attention. Losing one during a hunt wasn't simply unfortunate, it could be a costly embarrassment for the noble family. The stable workers faced challenges of their own. A knight's horse was more than transportation. It was a prized possession worth more than many servants could earn in years. Before sunrise and long after sunset, stable boys brushed coats, cleaned stalls, carried fresh straw, and checked every horse for signs of illness or injury. The animals often received better food than the people caring for them. History can sometimes be surprisingly humbling. One of the strangest customs involved silence. Servants were expected to move almost unnoticed through the castle. They learned to walk quietly, avoid interrupting conversations, and never draw unnecessary attention to themselves. During grand banquets, dozens of servants could be moving through the great hall at the same time, yet they spoke only when absolutely necessary. It was almost like becoming part of the furniture, always present, rarely acknowledged. There was also an invisible set of rules that every servant quickly memorized. You never sat in the Lord's chair. You never reached for food before permission was given. You never spoke unless someone of higher rank addressed you first. Breaking one of these customs might not seem serious today, but in medieval society, respect for social rank shaped nearly every moment of daily life. One particularly exhausting occasion was a royal feast. Imagine hundreds of guests filling the great hall. Musicians play gentle melodies while long tables overflow with roasted meats, fresh bread, colorful vegetables, and sweet desserts. Laughter echoes beneath the high wooden ceiling as candles cast a warm golden light across polished cups and silver plates. To the guests, it is an evening of celebration. To the servants, it feels more like running a marathon. Heavy platters travel endlessly between the kitchens and the hall. Empty cups are constantly replaced. More firewood is needed as the evening grows colder. Spilled wine must be cleaned before someone slips. Dirty dishes disappear almost as quickly as new ones arrive. The work continues for hours. And when the final guest finally stands and wishes everyone a good night, the servants do not rest. In many ways, their longest task is only beginning. Every table must be cleared, every bench returned to its place, every candle safely extinguished, ashes removed from the fireplaces. Leftover food stored carefully so it does not spoil. The floor swept once again after hundreds of muddy boots have crossed it. By the time everything is finished, the castle has become almost completely silent. Only the faint crackle of dying embers can still be heard. Many servants finally sink onto a simple wooden bench for a moment of rest. Their feet ache. Their hands are sore. Their backs feel stiff after carrying countless loads throughout the day. Yet there is a quiet satisfaction in knowing the castle still stands warm, clean, and peaceful because of their efforts. History remembers the names of kings, queens, and famous knights, but it is much harder to find the names of the ordinary men and women who kept those magnificent castles alive every single day. Without them, there would have been no glowing fireplaces, no grand feasts, no spotless halls, and no comfortable chambers waiting for noble guests. Their work was rarely celebrated. Their stories were seldom written down. And yet, for hundreds of years, they formed the steady heartbeat of castle life, quietly disappearing into history while making someone else's world appear effortless. Many of the stories we hear about medieval castles today come from films, novels, and fairy tales. They often show glittering banquet halls, cheerful servants, and a life that seems almost magical. It's an image that has captured our imagination for generations, but as with so much of history, the truth is quieter and often far more interesting. One common myth is that anyone who worked inside a castle lived comfortably simply because they lived within its walls. The reality was quite different. A castle was designed to protect its lord, not to provide comfort for everyone inside. Thick stone walls kept out invading armies, but they also trapped cold, damp air during winter. Many servants slept on simple straw mattresses in cramped rooms tucked beneath staircases, above kitchens, or inside crowded lofts. Privacy was almost unknown, and warmth was something to be shared rather than expected. Another popular myth suggests that servants enjoyed the same magnificent feasts as the noble family. After all, they worked in the kitchens. Surely they could enjoy a little of everything. In reality, most meals remained remarkably simple. Bread, pottage, onions, cabbage, and whatever leftovers remained after the Lord's table had been cleared made up the ordinary servant's diet. Fresh meat appeared occasionally, especially after large celebrations, but daily life was built around modest, filling foods rather than luxurious banquets. Then there is the idea that castle servants were constantly surrounded by excitement. Knights arriving on horseback, royal visitors, grand tournaments, lavish celebrations. Those events certainly happened from time to time. But for the people doing the work, exciting occasions usually meant longer hours rather than greater enjoyment. A tournament brought more horses to feed. A wedding meant hundreds of extra dishes to prepare and clean. A royal visit required every hallway, chamber, and courtyard to look absolutely perfect. The more important the celebration became, the harder the servants worked behind the scenes. Another myth tells us that medieval people accepted hardship simply because they didn't know anything better. The truth is far more human. Castle servants laughed with friends. They celebrated holidays when they could. They told stories around kitchen fires after long days. Parents worried about their children. Young people dreamed about better futures. Older workers hoped their aching backs would allow them to finish another winter. They were not so different from us. Their world was different. Their hopes were familiar. Some people also imagined that a servant remained trapped in the same position forever. While life offered very few opportunities compared to today, skilled workers could sometimes improve their circumstances. A talented cook might eventually oversee an entire kitchen. A trustworthy steward could manage large sections of the household. A skilled falconer or master carpenter earned respect through years of experience. These opportunities were uncommon, but they did exist. And perhaps the greatest myth of all is that ordinary people played only a small role in history. In truth, castles survived because thousands of forgotten men and women quietly carried water, baked bread, chopped wood, washed clothes, repaired roofs, cared for animals, and kept enormous households running day after day. Kings may have ruled the castles, but servants kept them alive. As our journey slowly comes to an end, imagine the castle growing peaceful once again. The last meal has been served. The final candle has been gently extinguished. Only a few glowing embers remain inside the great fireplaces, casting a soft orange light across the ancient stone walls. Outside, the night air is cool and still. The stars shine quietly above the towers. Somewhere beyond the castle walls, an owl calls across the dark countryside, its gentle voice drifting through the silent fields. Most of the castle is finally asleep. The great hall, so full of voices only a few hours ago, now rests in complete silence. Long wooden tables stand empty. The polished cups have been carefully stored away. The kitchens, once filled with smoke and busy footsteps, have become calm at last. A few servants quietly make their way toward their sleeping quarters. Their feet are tired. Their hands are sore. Their work is finally finished. Tomorrow, before the first hint of sunrise appears, another day will begin exactly as this one did. The fires will be lit. Fresh water will be carried from the well. Bread will be baked. Horses will be fed. Stone floors will once again echo with countless footsteps. The rhythm of castle life will continue, just as it has for generations. And perhaps, as you picture those peaceful corridors slowly fading into darkness, you can spare a quiet thought for the ordinary people whose names history rarely remembered. They built no kingdoms. They wore no crowns. Yet their steady hands kept an entire world alive. Now, allow the castle to drift farther and farther into the distance. The tall towers soften beneath the moonlight. The banners become still. The windows glow faintly before one by one, they too become dark. The quiet countryside stretches peacefully beneath the stars. The cool night breeze moves gently through the trees, and with every slow breath, let the sounds of the medieval world grow softer, more distant, until only peaceful silence remains. Thank you for joining tonight's journey through history. I hope these forgotten stories have brought you a little closer to the quiet lives of the ordinary people who lived behind castle walls so many centuries ago. Wherever you are, may your evening be calm, your mind peaceful, and your dreams gentle. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next chapter of history.